Hey Acers, and welcome to this week's Ace Role Playing Games Club. Kind of this week in gaming, but not necessarily. It's just more of a kind of a podcast format, and it's just me more or less rambling on about the role playing games that I love and the things that I love to play. But it's also my podcast for you guys who are the new game masters and new members of the Ace Role Playing Games Clubs. And that's part of what we do here is we try to help you become the greatest game master you can possibly become. And along the way, if we can build clubs that help prevent teen suicide, well, hey, that's just one of the side perks that we get, isn't it? Well, today I was going to talk about why I love Savage Worlds and things like that, and I will table that one for another time. But today I actually want to talk about let's not outsmart our players. Or try to, I should say. Because I've been in games where every trap the game master threw at us, because of the way my mind works and everything, I was just able to puzzle right through it, and I was able to defeat those traps without really even getting trapped. Whereas I I have definitely also seen some traps that are so complex that the players never even get past the first room. And so some dungeons have traps and things and swings and all these other kind of things that are basically. I'm going to turn the noises on this off because it gets annoying. Okay, let's turn that off. There we go. It'll stop chiming at me. Anyway, so there's a balance, especially when you're doing, well, any sort of game, because ultimately I've argued before and I'll argue again that the greatest role-playing game sessions that you're going to run are all going to be mysteries. And that's really what it comes down to. They're all going to be mysteries of some sort. So when you have something like when you have your mystery that's set up, and this can be a mystery on a space station, it can be a mystery in a fantasy world, but regardless, I would actually argue that mystery is the foundation to all of them. And you can use something like the case generator from Deadlands Noir to do that. So you got to figure out first how the players are going to get involved. And it shouldn't be somebody's running somebody 12 layers deep. Just try and have it maybe 2 layers deep. And I mean, yes, there is something to be said about the guy you've been working for the whole time is actually the bad guy that you're trying to take down, but he's got you chasing your own tail because he knows you're the only people who can actually outsmart him. But don't try to get it too complex. So in the case, like let's go ahead and go with Deadlands Noir. Now these are the classic gumshoe mystery, trench coat popped up, fedora hat on, carrying a 45 gat strapped under your arm, and walking in with that trench coat just tied, not even buckled up. You just tie it on, and you're walking in to that seedy nightclub and seeing the sultry singer up on stage, sitting back there, hat off because you're indoors, you're a gentleman, or if you're a lady, you can leave the hat on, but you're sitting at the bar watching the singer up on the stage, trying to figure out what the dame's angle is. How did you get put on her case? Why are you investigating her? So that's the kind of stuff that this case generator is originally meant for. But I'll show you toward the end of this video how it applies to any genre. So there's a business or corporate hook that could bring them in. So, a company, large business, small business, whatever kind of corporation could hire, like for example, in the case of Sherlock Holmes and the Blind Banker, if you watch that really rather fabulous BBC miniseries of Sherlock. In series 1, I know that you Brits, I love you to death, but why do you call them series instead of seasons? I've always wondered that. But anyway, in series 1, episode 2, in The Blind Banker, they get hired by a guy at a corporate bank. And so that's what happens. He calls them up, and it turns out that there's a connection there and everything like that. Those kind of things can be put in. And actually, corporate Blind Banker is an excellent example of not actually being too complex as far as what you're actually trying to do, like a Rube Goldberg machine, like on the title card of this video. But it could be that, and it kind of falls into part to the second option here, which is an existing contact, former client or repeat business person, or a friend who happened to go to uni with you, who's now a corporate banker, and the bank hires you to fix it. Or maybe another way that a corporation hires you is maybe a bank hires you to be someone who can break into their safest and most secure systems and places. And that's your job, is to go in there and, like in Sneakers, if you ever get a chance, one of the greatest heist movies ever made. I mean, it's a little dated on the computer stuff, and things just, it's aged as well as it can be expected, considering, because there's not really that much by way of effects. So you've got your business or corporate hook that hooks you into your characters into the story. You got an existing contact. You got a high profile member of society or politician who's trying to avoid publicity, seeks their help to solve a problem. And it might be a case of, I was referred to you because I hear you're the best, or it could be a case of they go in there hoping that these bumbling gumshoe detectives are going to mess it up and set up something else going on. We don't know that yet. If we're just generating the case, it could be a referral. It could be a total stranger, just a lady walks in off the street, and it's that moment of, I knew the dame was trouble the moment she stepped into my office, but I looked at her handbag, high end, as was the cut of the dress. So it could just be a stranger walking into your office, and it could just be by happenstance. There's an eye-catching article in a newspaper, or like, for example, in a well-made TV series that's on Amazon Prime called Bosch. The main character, he is investigating something else, and the main killer of the series keeps pulling him more and more in. And it could be something like that. It could be, if it's happenstance, you happen to be at the right place at the right time, you actually will need to make sure that you pick a victim as well as the perpetrator. But the event, the next step is pick the event. And when you pick that event, it is a cut and dried simple thing. Don't try to overcomplicate it. Don't try to make it too complex. Just make it an event. Make it a theft, blackmail, extortion, missing person. So somebody's been kidnapped, or somebody's made themselves disappear. Murder, fraud. Okay, there's kidnapping. So the missing person could be something more nefarious. But murder, fraud, kidnapping, flat out, they know it's a kidnapping. Arson, menace, or the employer's fearing for their life. Is in fear for their life. Maybe there's been threats or even attempts. They might not know why, but that doesn't make the danger any less. Or they're just vetting the heroes to see if they're going to do a good job on this case, so they can hire them for another. And then you can pick your perpetrator. Again, like I said, if it's a happenstance where they just happen to be downtown when shots go off and somebody goes running down an alley, and then there's a person who's been shot on the ground, and they have to decide between putting compression on this guy and trying to save his life, or chasing after the perp. Maybe some of the team can chase the perp, but the perp's going to have to get away. And so you can have been right there when the incident happened, because ultimately, here's a little trick, a little hint. It comes from the writing world, but it's the truth. We don't want to know who done it. We want to know why done it. Why in the world would a rational human being, or blue alien with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a mouth and eyes, or whatever, why is it doing what it does? Why does Schlock and Schlock Mercenary, why does Sergeant Schlock hold a gun inside of his mouth? Because he doesn't have anywhere else to hold it. And why does he need to get eyeballs off the eyeball tree on his home planet? Because, hey, that's the only place they grow, the only eyes that work for him. So they have to go back and get that. And so that there's a reason for this alien creature with alien anatomy to need to go to his home world to get new eyeballs. It's actually, it was a pretty silly and simple thing, but Howard Taylor, shout out to my friend, he did an amazing job with that. And I'll put a link to Schlock Mercenary at the bottom here, because if you haven't read Schlock Mercenary, it's a fun read. And Howard's artwork just keeps getting better and better and better all the way through it. I mean, the guy is really top notch now, and he's actually the one who illustrated XDM, both editions of it. So get a chance, check out Schlock Mercenary. So the perpetrator could be like determining the bad guy requires 2 steps. This is from the Deadlands Noir book. First, roll a d8 on the next table, on the table below, and find the identity of the villain. Next, draw a card from the action deck. A black card or joker means the villain is somehow tied up in the supernatural, while a red card is the bad guy is 100% naturally evil. This is, again, specific to Deadlands Noir, because you might not have supernatural in your story. It might be a straight-up detective story. And if it is, then maybe the black card would mean they're tied up with other people who are more evil than they, and then a red joker means, or a red card says the bad guy is just doing evil for evil's sake. But here's the thing about evil in general. Evil is not a thing that just human beings just slide right into. And nobody's born evil. They become evil by usually choices that they make that are bad choices, but then they add the next layer on top of that choice, and that is they lie about it. And then more bad choices, more lies, more bad choices, more lies. And they get deeper and deeper into the spiral. They might even start to believe their own lies. And they might even think they are doing for the common good or the greater good or for whatever reason. There's another movie that I am going to spoil it. It's been out for a while, and again, I don't recommend any teenagers on this site see it, but it's a movie called Hot Fuzz. And in Hot Fuzz, the bad guys are killing anybody who messes up their idyllic life for the greater good. And so they can't be wrong because they're doing it for the greater good. And that's when they attack police officers and they try and stop all sorts of things like that from happening. And it's a beautiful example of how human beings deteriorate from possibly good people into something horrible that can do horrible things. And maybe it'll help you have some compassion and also help your players build some compassion for people who are doing wrong things in this world, because maybe they either A, are just too ashamed to admit the truth and be honest and upfront and take their licks, or maybe they've already gone beyond that point and they think that what they're doing is they're doing it for the greater good of everyone, and they think that they need to be in charge. Maybe this villain needs to be in charge and tell everybody else what they need to do, because obviously with his superior intellect, he can make better choices than they ever could on their own. But on the flip side, if a group of people together, on the whole, their decisions will balance out to the good, then there's something to be said about having that freedom of choice and having checks and balances in place. But that's me kind of wandering off a little bit there about the nature of good and evil. So you could have the perpetrator be a relative, a friend, a business associate, corrupt official, a criminal, competitor to them in business or in love, an outsider. As a matter of fact, one of the greatest historical examples of outsiders who are problems is a group called Murder Inc. They were from Brownsville, New York. It was a location where there was a group of Jewish mobsters who would take contracts for hire and go to other places and kill somebody who was targeted by that local mob for death, and then they would just they would be paid to do that killing, because then the police had nothing to go on, because they weren't a member of the local mob, and nobody knew who they were in the local mob, and so there was nothing for the police to follow up on. And that was a little group called Murder Inc. You can look those guys up on Wikipedia. And the boys from Brownsville were, I mean, there's even a comic book, a graphic novel about them. And so other, speaking, that leads into the next one of organized crime. Perhaps they are the ones that are doing it, or there could be other groups that could do the criminal thing. And so next, when you're looking at the motive, there are, and here's the why, but the motive is one of 6 simple things, really, in almost any mystery: greed, political gain, revenge, love, knowledge. They're looking for something that's, and the crime's merely a side effect of what they're looking for. So that could be knowledge or money or whatever. And then survival. And then you can decide whether it's physical survival, financial survival, or social survival. And then, or even legal survival. There might be a legal issue to it. Step 5 is the evidence. Evidence is what's going to lead your player characters and your players through their minds back to the actual crime scene, or to the next stage of the crime, to understand it. So, as an example, say there's some physical evidence. I'm going to try and give an example of physical testimony on documentary evidence. The physical evidence is something along the lines of they're investigating. And this is where Justin Alexander. Justin Alexander. Justin Alexander's an actor. Justin Alexander said it right. Give them 3 different clues let's say they're investigating the dead man's apartment. 3 different clues. A matchbook from the Twisted Lime. A coat check ticket from the Twisted Lime. And a playbill, essentially, of a playbill from the Twisted Lime for the dance show. I can speak here. For the dance show that's going on there. So there's 3 different clues. But the only one you give them is the matchbook. They can roll notice rolls, or investigation rolls, or whatever it is your game has. They can roll that to get either of those 2. And then so that's the physical evidence. Now, as they walk out, they can talk to the old geezer who's sweeping the hall. And they can say, "Hey, Pops, Eddie Willers here." No, not Eddie Willers. That's in the book I'm reading. Sorry. Eddie Wilson here. Did he ever talk to you about the Twisted Lime? And the old guy can go, "Whew, I tell you, I got a peek inside there once, and them dancing girls, they was some of the prettiest beauties I ever seen." So there's a testimonial evidence. Or you can speak to other potential witnesses and contacts. This can be role played out through a networking role play or networking set of roles. And then documentary evidence, they could go down to the newspaper morgue and looking through old copies. They can see Eddie Wilkins and a star girl stepping out the side door of the Twisted Lime. And so now you've got 3 different ways of showing 3 different things to show that Eddie Wilkins had been down at the Twisted Lime. So now you go down to the Twisted Lime. That's where the players go next. And all the evidence pointed them there. Now, admittedly, sometimes players just don't want to go to the Twisted Lime. And if they don't want to go to the Twisted Lime, that's fine. Have another murder happen at the Twisted Lime. That they could have been there to stop if they had been there, but they weren't, because they went somewhere else. There is an option of a twist, and that is a betrayal or a double blind, where the villain is actually a front for another villain who's trying to keep their involvement secret. It could be a hidden motive, dark secret, mistaken identity, a tangled mess, rolling twice more on that table to, and ignoring a 6 result, but get some really twisted stuff. So maybe it's a hidden motive inside of a double blind or something like that. And then if it's betrayal, it could be a oops, their employer spills the beans by accident. It could be for revenge from a previous investigation or imaginary beef that the client has. Save my own hide. The client gets in over his head and gives up the heroes to save his own skin. Or a benevolent betrayal. Out of some misguided notion or just plain naivete, their employer gives up the goods on the Seamuses because she thinks it's actually for their own good. And then if there's a hidden motive, it could be a distraction. It could be a snipe hunt to, like I said before, pull the player characters off. Could be a bait and switch. Or it could be a spoiler. The employer really doesn't care about solving the original crime. They're just interested in damaging the reputation of a prominent figure who may not even be the real villain. The dark secret, if the person hiring them has, or the way they get involved, if there's a dark secret behind it, could have silent partner, or it could be a case of bad blood, and your characters are just being brought in to make the battle worse. They could be looking for a patsy, or they could be a patsy, or they could just be full on guilty. Their employer is actually the guilty party. So that's one of the dark secrets that I mentioned earlier. So in this 20 minutes of talking about this, I hope I've given you some ideas of how to not make your mystery plots that are the core of anything. And I told you I'd tell you a bit how this applies outside of film noir. This could be a Weird West setting, and almost nothing here would have to change. Maybe the tech changes, maybe it goes up or down, but ultimately, these are all stories of speculative fiction. And when you have stories of speculative fiction, you can easily exchange parts for other parts. When you have science fiction, go ahead and you can go anywhere from James Bond just getting a cool couple gadgets, like in You Only Live Twice, when he gets the cigarettes, don't smoke, but back in the 60s they thought it was okay, but he gets those cigarettes that has a dart in it, and he blows it, and he's able to knock one of the guys out. Or it could be the exploding pen, like from James Bond GoldenEye, where he's just clicking it, and he's finally got it on charge, and boom. And it could be that it could be anything from that low level of science fiction where it's just barely tomorrow's tech, all the way through galaxy-spanning starships that can go hyperspace or light speed, and they can, or warp speed or whatever, and they can bound between points in the galaxy, and it's just as quick to go from one galaxy to another as it is to drive down to the grocery store. And whatever it is, in each of those cases, in each of those settings, it is simple. So that's sci-fi. I'm going to finish up real quick. Fantasy, of course, change out the guns for wands, which Harry Potter did, for example. Change out the guns for wands. Change out that grumpy Scottish mechanic at the shop for a dwarf. I mean, you want to hear a fun. If you're over, I'd say 13 or 14, ask your parents before you do, because they're. No, I'd say go 17, because there are some F-bombs in the story. But there's a great story that you can eventually read called Third Eye by Felicia Day. And it's not necessarily you read it, you get to listen to Felicia Day and her friends perform it. And then, so you've got all of this. And you can apply that mystery format, even in a horror story, or if it's just a mystery. You can apply this format to any of those and give your players a great time. Because that's what this is all about. It's about giving your players a great time. It's about them having fun while doing it. So I know that you're going to do a great job on your next game. And I know that maybe you can pull some of these elements in. And I know that you are an amazing person. I love you. And I honestly look forward to every one of these times that I get to talk to you over the video and in my little shorts And I want you to know that the world is a much better place because you are in it and you're still sticking around. It does get better than whatever it is you're going through right now. I mean, I'm a professional scrum master, agile coach, project manager, could be a product owner, whatever it is. I'm a professional at that. I help companies transform, and I'm good at what I do. Yet, through no fault of my own, I am currently going through a hard time right now as I'm looking for the next job. I'm looking for the next company to help. And it's a hard time. So, hard times don't go away as you grow up. But hard times do get easier to handle as you grow up. And you get stronger and tougher. So, stick with it. I made it through my teen years, and it was because of role playing games, and because I had friends like you. So, stick with it, and I will see you in the next episode. I hope to see you at my table.